Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duva, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who is live streaming his first ever podcast recording tonight.
Tim Longo. Wow, it's happening.
It's happening.
And you're recording. It's real.
It is real.
Intro, everything.
You wanna remind folks why we're doing this? Why are we doing this, Tim?
So, the wonderful community that has sprung up around, sprung up because of the podcast, but I think it's become much bigger than that at this point. So we are a very small part of it. Defeating Games for Charity is, we're coming up on the third year for that charity event, which is Video Game History Foundation is, I believe, the main organization that it's being run for. And so one of last year's, which, yes, we're just coming in under the wire,
Yeah,
which is so
2.5 months or something like that.
For last year, the last one of them, which was early this year, one of the unlocks for the charity event was if we make enough money, and I apologize, I don't remember what that cap was for that one. It was pretty high, though, I think. Then we would agree, if we made enough money if all of the community collectively made enough money in the charity event, that we would record finally a live version of the podcast on Twitch. So if you're hearing this via the usual podcast feed, we are currently streaming it on Twitch. We have chat going. All the usual suspects are in there, and we're interacting with them, and we'll hopefully get some. I think we're both really excited about how big the community has gotten and how it is well beyond the two of us at this point. But the charity event's awesome. The third year is coming up. Brett's going to do some announcements on that. But that's why we are doing, for some unknown reason, a live version of recording the podcast, which I know many other podcasters do because they go to Twitch and they record on Twitch, and it's kind of a more interactive experience. That's not really us. We're not that organized. I don't know if we'd want to be on a schedule like that either. I don't know. We'll see how this one goes, I guess. But that's why we are doing this.
Yes. So as you mentioned, this live stream is the result of the stretch goal for Defeating Games for Charity 2025. Happily, and this is announcement number one, between now and November 15th, they are accepting applications to be a streamer on 2026's Defeating Games for Charity, which will be January 24th and 25th of next year. The applications are open until November 15th. So if you go to, and this link will be in the show notes, but if you go to defeatinggames.com/apply, you can find the application process there. And I know they meet and talk about all of those things in the Discord. We don't really get involved. This is all the community's thing. We're more involved just on some of the rewards and stretches and all that stuff. And we're happy to do it. And then the other announcement I had is that also on November 15th, unrelated to that, but also a charity, one of our community members, Noises, is part of a 12-hour Rocksmith Raid Train Twitch stream, where they're going to be trying to raise charity for the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, or PanCan, I believe is what it's called. So if you want to look up that organization, or if you want to be part of that, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes if I can. I don't have a lot of information on it, but I'm sure we'll get some more out there in the Discord between now and then. Noises, I'm sure we'll post there as well, and we'll mention it over the next couple of weeks. Both of these announcements over the next couple of weeks as well. So,
and Noises participated last year in earlier this year's 2025's charity Defeating Games.
That's right.
He was one of the streamers, and if you have not watched him do his thing, you definitely want to do that, and especially to support pancreatic cancer research.
Yeah.
I just realized I'm nodding a lot. By the way, if people didn't know this, we never record the podcast even on our own with video. So this is weird for us.
We normally don't see each other.
I'm like
And in fact,
nodding.
I keep looking down at this monitor below me, but then I'm trying to look back up. It's like, I don't know. It's not the ideal scenario for me. I like to be able to look at my notes. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm consulting my notes and making sure I'm keeping us on track. The camera's kind of right here in the middle of the two monitors. So,
and I'm looking to my right because that's where my other monitor is. So
yeah. So now you see how the sausage is made. Congrats. I actually don't even normally do it in this room. So, because normally,
right, good point.
I'm normally upstairs. I had to get a long
because your
cable,
camera isn't in the other location.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
right.
So normally it'd be you on screen only if we did it that way. So
right.
I do sometimes wonder if guests find that a little weird. Like they come on, they don't know us a lot of the time. Sometimes they do, and they know our voices already. But for a fair number of them, we don't have a long, history with them. And just to come on and be like, oh, here's these two similar sounding white guy voices, like good luck keeping track of that. And who knows? They probably don't.
Well, I sound enough like Kermit the Frog that it's okay.
Oh, that's true. In the future, I'll try to add that to my impression. Kermit the Frog here.
Those are the two. Yoda and Kermit the Frog are the two criticisms I get of my voice. We did do men. Exactly by not by design. One of our guests requested video. It was the GoldenEye composer, which I'm blanking on.
That's right. Grant Kirkhope.
He preferred it, so he's like, "Hey, can we do? Did we do that on Zencastr? Or how did we do that?
We did. Yeah, it's available on Zencastr. So we probably did it there. I was actually not in the country at that time, and I was under a blanket. Remember the audio?
Oh my god! Yeah, that's right. You were under a blanket.
Yeah, to muffle this because it was a very echoey space.
Oh my god!
So
that's funny.
Normally, I'm just kind of the angles are better in my living room, and there's a carpet, and it was all just absorbed. But and there's a carpet down here, so it's not so bad. But anyway, hopefully it's not too echoey. All right, shall we get to the cast then? We're here to discuss Portal 2 as a kind of bonus, bumper episode, I guess, to our. I'll call it a bumper episode because that's what Eric Wolpaw called all the speaking before and after the puzzle those are all bumper.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, nice.
So this is our bumper episode about Portal 2, which if you've been following along, Tim and I have played the co-op campaign. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. But it was we played all of that, but we've each played quite a bit of the single player campaign as well. And so we'd like to try to cover both of those things tonight. What is your, we should probably talk a little bit as we normally do. Like, what's your history with Portal 2?
Yeah, I think it's pretty typical when it comes. I'm trying to think of when it came out. Where was I? I mean, we've talked about this before, but so often our relative timelines in life have to do with what project were we on. That's how I think of life. Like, what company was I at? So I don't even remember though, because I guess it was
like 2010 or 2011. You were probably at LucasArts your second tour.
Second tour, yeah, I think you're right then.
We're just wrapping it up,
because
it ended around that time. I think it's around that time that it came out. I didn't stuff in advance.
I think ironically, which we talked about for those who watched us play the co-op mode. We have a mutual friend,
and
Reed,
former guest,
right, for TIE Fighter. Yeah. Reed, who shout out to Reed. He listens to the podcast as well. Though he might get to this in like 2030.
Yeah.
Because he listens very slowly. But anyway, he and I played co-op back then, and I think we actually played co-op first. So I did finish the campaign back then, but I don't think other than one person, I didn't know anybody at Valve at the time. So yeah, I mean, it was just, I was surprised, to be honest. I don't think we talked about this much while we were playing Portal 2, but for some reason, I remember being surprised that Portal 2 was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about this a little bit. Like, it's definitely, and we'll talk about the necessity of Portal 2, But yeah, it is kind of surprising because it was such a quirky out of left field that also was part of the orange box. So it was not like separately tracked, like what its sales were. I mean, its critical reception is undeniable, right? I mean, and clearly,
Right.
Everybody who played it loved the game. I mean, there's very few haters of Portal. It's definitely top 10 list, kind of worthy. But again, like that critical reception doesn't necessarily connect to sales. And if they were selling them, of course they own Steam, so I'm sure they know just how much time people play Portal, and they could make judgments on their own. That's kind of an unusual case for them. So presumably they were seeing something in that data of like, you know what, actually it looks like we do have something here. We should, we should, you know, play on that, revisit it, keep it fresh. Like, I don't know, keep it alive. There is a intellectual property refresh rate that you have to hit, right? To not
See what
lose
you did there.
Yeah.
Keep it alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I'm
mean,
still alive.
it's a good question. Eric talked a little bit about it, if I recall, when we had him on. But Valve is a very unique place. Ironically, I just had lunch with somebody who had worked there previously last week. I have a photo that I saw on the street that I texted to Brett that I forgot to post it in Discord. But we have a Discord community who many of you are listening and even on this Twitch right now. So I'll post it in there. But I won't spoil it. But we were talking about Valve. I was just curious. I'm always curious. We're always curious about it. And it's just, I won't divulge anything secret, but it's just the way that projects get spun up is very different than a lot of other studios. And to Brett's point, like, what is the motivation for doing a sequel? Our impression, which I do think is fairly public, is that Valve's projects kind of get started in a more organic fashion by the employees. It's not always really an initiative that corporate, which you hear from most other publishers and things, right? Where they come back and they come and say, we need another Call of Duty. So this had to gain some sort of internal momentum for it to exist at all. And then the way that it kind of works there is that people within the company, which is still, as developers go, a fairly small set of developers in the grand scheme of how many projects they have. And people join in almost voluntarily to help make the game. And at some point when they're into ship mode, they know, okay, we gotta make this thing, we gotta final this thing. So people kind of all jump in, but it sounds very collaborative and more organic. So, Eric, I think, was a good example of somebody who probably, we don't know this for sure, but there would have had to have been internal advocates for the game to really push it forward. And Eric probably was one of them. We don't know, I'm guessing. And it was such a beloved game that, to Brett's point, the IP, and one of the topics I want to talk about today has to do with the IP. The IP doesn't get a lot of love, and I'm putting Half-Life and Portal in the same world, of course. And so you can kind of see that this was, Portal was short. The first one was short, and you could see people wanting more. And I think it's a really interesting discussion for today's episode on what more means.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into that. I mean, I will say, to your point about the, the sort of structure of Valve, and it's kind of like horizontal, structure.
Mm-hmm.
Like around this time, maybe a year or so before, their employee handbook was released online as well. I don't remember if that was a leak. Not that they were protective of it. They weren't like mad or upset about it if it was a leak. It's just kind of like, why would you release that, I guess. But I remember looking at the time, and they had they were very clear about what they were looking for in employees, which were like employees who are both broad but deep, so broad could cover a number of sort of disciplinary areas, but deep in one in particular, maybe, I think, was one of the things. And then the structure, the horizontal structure, was like a huge part of it as well. So I definitely remember that being kind of the space into which this game, kind of came out, is like, oh, we understood more about Valve than we knew before, if you didn't know somebody there. And I didn't, until I don't know, Brad Muir, maybe. I can't remember who went there first, or the Campo Santo folks when they were acquired. It's like, oh, now I know whatever, half dozen people there. But it is a kind of a quiet and extremely efficient company in terms of money generated per employee. I think they regularly rank among the top in the world because they're a small number of people, but they own Steam. So they get a cut of every PC game nearly released. So it's quite an interesting company. It's and a weird place, I imagine, to work from that standpoint. So
yeah, PC. I mean, it's just Portal 2 specifically. I don't know. It's just such a weird product.
Yeah.
I guess in the end of the day, it does logically make sense that they would do it. They did the Half-Life 2, I guess, right? So things like that, some obvious things,
right? And episode 2 was part of this orange box packages of the original game as well, right?
Right.
And Alex, of course, was in the future at that point, but everybody was still waiting for episode 3. In fact, there was probably some response to Portal 2 being like, I don't want more Portal. Give me episode 3, right? Because that ends on a sad note. Let's just say, that people wanted to follow up on. So we also we talked to Mark Laidlaw, by the way, as an interview as well, and Dario is Casals, I think, right? Is his last name? Yeah. Anyway, I'll put links for those in the show notes, or you can find them on the website. But they are former guests, and Mark in particular talked about his story that he was thinking about for Half-Life 3, and then it was released 6 months after talking to us. I think on the web he put a regendered, renamed, thinly veiled Half-Life 3 story out there to talk about what the next game would be there.
Weird thing.
Anyway, so everybody wants Half-Life 3 or a Half-Life Episode 3 or Half-Life 3 for that matter. But they do Portal 2. And we were discussing before the show, whether it was necessary. I mean, you say that logically it makes sense, but we can talk about necessary and then go into what does it mean to be Portal 2 after from that. So pick up there wherever you want.
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing that kept, maybe did for you too, but it kept coming up in my notes while playing Portal 2, and I'm just about to start the last chapter, which is I think pretty short, the one where you go after Wheatley. So I'm almost done with the game single player, and we played it. Of course, co-op doesn't relate to the story as much, but I don't know. It's such a funny, because that the timing of the game compared to also where Valve was transitioning into more live service multiplayer games, which is pretty much all they do now, right?
Yep.
And then there's this little bit of an anomaly, but also I forgot. I only had played it the once before. I had forgot how robust of a game this is. Like, it's long. The campaign's long. There's a lot of puzzles. There's a lot of new mechanics. And there's more there's more story there and canon and fiction and lore than I would have thought. Don't get me wrong, I love the game and I'm glad it exists. However, without hopefully people throwing tomatoes at me, Portal 1 we talked about in our Portal 1 series, I think is almost a perfect game. Like, it has the whole package is there. It's not because it's short. It's one of the reasons I like it, but it's not one of the main reasons. And so I felt like it kind of did what it needed to do. And if this had come from anyone other than Valve, I would be kind of cynical about it, in that they're like, we need to capitalize on an IP. We need to ride the wave, because that's what corporations do. They're like, oh, we have a hit. We got to make another one. Valve didn't need to do that. So at least we know that their motivations were more, obviously they want to make money too, but their motivations weren't the same as another publisher, right? Yeah. So you can kind of put aside that they're just trying to cash in, because if you're going to make a sequel to Portal 1, I think they did a really, really good job at making a sequel to Portal 1. All that being said, I don't know if it added anything that new to the equation for me. And it was really long, and it was kind of like a little drawn out,
Yeah.
for like not filler per se. And
No,
I
but
have a
there's
counterpoint to
probably
my
more,
point.
there's probably more puzzles than there absolutely need to be with each kind of thing. There's also whole new mechanics that are,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I do feel like they kind of covered, everything they needed to with the mechanics they had, with one cool exception that I remember that I got today that I was like, oh, that's actually a really cool thing that they hadn't done with the beams. So they had those laser beams were in the first one, and of course the portals, and those kind of, and the cubes, things with weight to put down buttons and things like that. Moving platforms. Like there was only a handful of mechanics really, and some of them were really just kind of like bare bones, just there to kind of throw a thing into the mix. But it's really just like, can you think with the portals, and can you can you sort of derive the sort of implications of those portals, right? It's like, oh, that
Mm-hmm.
means I can do this, I can do like this, the speed, so they kind of like explored everything they needed in order to make Portal 2. There are quite a number of puzzles in that vein at the beginning. And then they're like, but what if also this and also
Mm-hmm.
this and also this? And it's like more and more frosting on the cake, as it were. That is maybe, yeah, I'm sorry. That's also why we don't do this on camera. I don't have to, I can just imagine him shaking his head. But it's a lot. And then of course, because they're so good at introducing mechanics, each of those have to have sort of ramps into like how
Yep.
they work. And that's what extends the time, is like, oh, you've learned about, these bridge beams or whatever. Like, okay, now you've got to realize that they don't have to be horizontal. They can also be vertical. They can stop your momentum. That, like, here's all the rules to do with those things. And it's like, and you've got to do, I mean, that's like 6 puzzles just to be like, okay, this is how these work. Now we can do
Right.
some interesting things with them. And it's like, so now here's another 6 puzzles, right? And before you know it, you've got, whether it's like 5 or 6 new mechanics. So you've got like at least, you know, 60 puzzles, puzzle rooms. And
Yep.
it's like, oh my God, and it adds up fast, as opposed to what, 17 or whatever it was in the first one.
I don't know if cognitive load is the right term. We maybe talked about it from time to time, but uh, and let's see, you're in the Cave Johnson section.
Very, very near the end, he's like dying and yelling about lemons
Yeah,
and
so
stuff.
you've gotten the white goo at this
Yeah, I
point.
have all the goo
Yeah,
and
yeah. So, and then the next section, you meet back up with Wheatley, um, and it's kind of like the run to the end of to the
right.
boss, etc. And she's with you and everything. And the reason I bring that up is that there ends up being a bit of a clash for me. Not a yeah, I'll stand behind my clash word. There ends up being a bit of a clash in that they did a great job at world building in Portal 2, and I do think Portal 1 alluded to, like, as a player, I wanted more of the world. So full admission, like, yes, it makes sense that they're going to flesh things out. And the whole Cave Johnson thing, where you go from the 70s to the 80s to the present, as you're rising up, like, just chef's kiss
Yeah,
of just
absolutely
like
brilliant.
world design
Yeah.
and just context, and everything is just really amazing.
And character development, like, I mean, just everything about that whole section, like, and the slow revelation of who GladOS is, like, I mean, just beat for beat for beat. There's even stuff in there that explains Chell, who Chell is,
Mhm.
if you find it. So it's just like on every possible front, they are,
Yep.
like, even using the gray white goo, right, which is basically the paint that is the portal paint. This, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, of course they had to develop a thing that made these surfaces different from those surfaces, right? It's some sort of mixed technology, right? It's
Mhm.
like, oh, like, I mean, yeah, like you said, chef's kiss,
It's
perfectly baked.
really well done. Yeah. I mean, it just completely structured in such a way, and I know it's an award-winning game. I think they won various awards for it, and I
Yeah.
think it deserves. So I'm not trying to, like, poo-poo it or anything, because I think it is just a masterful game. To follow up Portal 1 with Portal 2 is amazing. It's a miracle that they were able to do it. But at the same time, it's like once you add in all that, the thing that it didn't occur to me before I started playing it again, that I didn't even think would come up, is once you do enter into such an established and deep world building effort like they did, even adding in people like Cave Johnson, which is voiced by J.K. Simmons, right?
Yes.
Um, and Stephen Merchant as Wheatley. You know, you have these amazing voice actors who are doing amazing jobs, and I'm invested. First time through, didn't think about any of this stuff. Playing for the podcast, obviously we overanalyze everything. The world building, once you get back to Wheatley, and I would even say during Cave Johnson too, because it's kind of like, it's a cool section, but it's also a little bit of a novelty of like, yes, this is awesome, I'm getting some stuff, but then Cave kind of comes and goes, and then you're off and you're on to the next thing. It's like, okay, it was a neat section, but at the middle,
he's still just bumpers, right? You know, just like
right,
all
he
the
doesn't
original
have
puzzles.
a lot.
He doesn't have a ton. It's beginning and end of the level. I mean, sometimes they're a little more extended because they know you're going to be like flying across some gap forever, you know, and then finally landing and getting in the elevator. But the elevator will wait. So it's like definitely bumpers of like, okay, at the beginning and the end of the level, I'm going to get some information. I love how they go from like, you know, astronauts and Olympians and like the absolute pinnacle of human achievements to like homeless people that they can get for $60, you know, off the street to do the test because they're broke. Well,
right.
You know, it's like, oh my God, you know, it's quite dire, as Johnny say, the circumstances.
And it should, yeah, no, I mean, it's a really rare and effective way to give you backstory for this company, Aperture Science, Aperture Laboratories, that we didn't have before. And even though this is sort of like I'm counterpointing myself on this, which I will do later, but the point I was about to make there is just that the really, really deep and well done world building started to conflict with puzzle solving for me. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yes, love Cave. I love this. Oh man, 70s. I'm getting to see the bottom of the building. It's kind of like Control in that way, right? You're seeing like the foundations of how this corporation was built, this science corporation. And being such a big Half-Life world fan myself as a player, I'm eating all this stuff up. And then there's a puzzle that is like, and we should talk separately about the in-world contextual puzzles, because those are really interesting, because I think that's something that Portal 1 wanted to give you and didn't give you. But there is still that, I think it's that cognitive dissonance that we talk about with shooting and character development, right? Or whatever, combat and character development. Uncharted problem. So I just didn't anticipate that same cognitive dissonance being in this game with puzzles.
Yeah.
But it makes sense now that I think about it, because I'm like, yeah, there's a lot going on, and there's characters and there's world building, and I'm still doing puzzles, which I like the puzzles, but there ended up being a tension for me there.
Yeah. No, and I don't disagree at all. I mean, for me, the biggest tension was, you know, I love how through the beginning, it's like 4 chapters, so it's a lot of puzzles of GladOS doing these tests with you, that you're getting little peeks at Wheatley, and then finally he quote unquote breaks you out. And that section felt, in a way it didn't the first time I played it, that felt interminable. Like it's like, and it's like, I'm just running, like as a player, I'm really just running through hallways here. Like I'm going to eventually get through to the other side of this. Like when I first played it, it was like really exciting because like I don't know where I'm going.
You don't know what's going to happen.
But here, playing it again, it really felt like this feels too extensive for the payoff. Which is, in the original game, it's like this leads you out to the end. And, we actually didn't talk about this on the podcast, but the original ending didn't have you in the parking lot of Aperture Science being dragged away to, get tested again in the future. They added that as a patch before Portal 2 came out. Originally it was like you just showed up, and I remember it being like a desert. Basically, you were like, you went out this door, there was a shack, and there was nothing. Like the world had been annihilated. It
Ooh,
was
I
like,
don't even remember that at
oh
all.
yeah, that's my memory anyways. Like she goes outside and GladOS is like, well, here, this is what you wanted, and there's nothing there. That's my recollection. I might have to go look and track down a video or something. But anyway, like I said, so this sort of beat goes from like, this is exciting, I'm going to get out, like whatever, to like, this is just a long extended sequence, and then I'm going to go back to more puzzles, is a very different arc, and it's way too long to be that. Even if it is developing Wheatley, it's because of that tension. I think is like, it needs to develop this character further, explain further what he's all about. It needs you to really understand that he's adult. Like it needs. I mean, that's kind of the payoff. Is like, when you GladOS finally tells you what his deal is, you're like, oh, this makes sense. And oh, I've done something terrible. And that's a great reversal, but it is so long to effectively not really be doing anything. Like you're just running from place to place, occasionally a place in Portal, but like it's very like run through this hallway, jump to this location, whatever. I mean, it's not there's the cool thing with the turret, find another turret, the defective turret, and use it and clone it and all that stuff, which is fun.
Yeah, there's some cool moments.
That's maybe the only kind of thing in there that I'd be like, oh, I'm glad I had that. And the rest of it feels like, oh my God, too much.
Yeah. And I feel like that ended up being like, if you can imagine, like for me, when playing those sections, I think to myself, what was the block out process for that? Is a level designer blocking this out, or are they trying to block out space for story? There's always an interesting tension there of like, we need more space for story, so you make more space. But as you're saying what you were just saying, it just dawned on me that's a really good point that I hadn't anticipated. In a game like Half-Life, which is also very rich in world building, and you're going through these worlds that are really fleshed out and they're all really well thought through, there's always combat to fall back on. You're always shooting. For better or for worse, you're shooting a gun. Yeah. But that's the core loop. But unless you're doing a puzzle in Portal, there isn't much to do, right? Unless you're using the portal gun to solve a puzzle. So it's I don't know. I didn't anticipate that coming. It's very anti-Tim to feel like the world building, which is so good in this game, actually conflicts with the core point of it. And again, wrapping it back around to Portal 1, which this episode is a bonus to, I think because it was so focused around the science of it, and like the chambers, like we didn't see, it's like, we talked about it when we did that series, you get to see behind the scenes a little bit, right? Especially at the end, and you have some reveals and things and it was sort of like just enough. But here they're like, okay, the whole game, you're going to see all the behind the scenes stuff. And it's like, there was a time when for some consulting I did, I got to go behind the scenes at Disneyland. And my wife and I are big Disney fans, Disneyland fans. And as you might imagine, it did have an impact on my enjoyment for, it kind of ruins the magic, right? Because you're like, so it's like too much of that. But to your point, like you're running on catwalks and, and the team did an amazing job.
I was going to say, there's no individual moment where I'm like, this is bad. It's just, there's too much, there is like, the environments are really cool. And there's like lots of like, quote unquote explanation. There's lots of like stuff you would expect to be in the background of a place this massive, but also it's like, oh, this thing is way bigger than I thought. Like I thought it was pretty huge from Portal 1, but like this thing is really massive. And there's all this infrastructure that supports all the stuff in it. And there's great gags. Like when you go and there's a door that she's placed on the wall, which is like to GladOS or whatever, like, and it falls over. I'm like, so good. Like there are moments, but like, again, it's just like, I want that stuff to be gestured at more than I want it to be stretched out and told to me,
Yeah.
So I
well, if you do continue, the section you're about to hit is like,
I could
you
tell.
know,
Yeah, you have a puzzle where you've got like all three types of goo, and you have to climb, 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 and then you got to climb some more. And I was
yeah,
like, oh yeah, I remember this. Like, and this is more of that. And
it's kind of a neat
yeah,
thing. But once Wheatley comes back in, he basically is retesting you,
yeah, yeah,
but he's, in his doofus way, he's
yeah. They're
retesting
all
you,
the tests are dumb.
and she's with you,
Yeah,
and so she's commenting on that. So it's kind of it's definitely a neat back and forth between the two of them. And it's just the potato thing is still like, almost at the scale of the song, right? It's
oh, it's
like
a
it's such a
top tier gaming moment
yeah,
when
it's really clever.
when she's in that potato. And I mean,
So
and here's the thing I didn't notice at the time is that they support that in the initial puzzles where they're, that after them you go into the elevator room and there's like videos on the walls. One of those videos is talking about how like we've worked it so our AIs can run on like 0.133 millivolts or whatever. It's like so that they could basically run in a potato. It's like they could
that's
run with
funny.
no, and it's like I mean the thought that goes into the creating of something like that to me is like that is magical to me.
Mhm.
Even if playing this a second time, I can see some of this stuff is like a little overextended. It is magical. Like I honestly, I think what if I were to do it, like I would take out the blue and orange goo and just do the paint goo,
Mm.
like shorten that whole section, even though you get a lot of the cool backstory. And we should talk more about Cave Johnson and Carolyn and all that. That's probably, if I were to like, how do I shrink this thing? That would
Yeah.
probably be the area where I'm like, what? There's too many. Like that opens up a huge world. Like they haven't even scratched the surface of the number of puzzles you could have there with
Mhm.
just the elements of jumping and moving fast. Like
Mhm.
they could do way more. And of course, we played some of those things in co-op as well. So a couple more topics for us in the near future.
Yeah. And the next section after, which is called, I think it's called the reunion and the itch. The itch is specifically where he's testing you, Wheatley's testing you.
Mm-hmm.
They are trying to throw everything at you at that point, but um that's where my, like, from a game development standpoint, that's where my question comes in of chicken or the egg problem of like, did they design a bunch of puzzles and then wrap in how Wheatley, how it's that sort of back and forth and the collaborative nature between narrative design, level design, and everybody, all the
Yeah.
disciplines putting
Yeah.
that together. But it's just interesting to see, like, because again, the execution is great. Like this, I just want to say, this is a great game.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
still a great
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
I still enjoy playing it. I want to finish it, and I'm almost done. And that's rare for me for a bonus episode to replay the whole game. But it's just very enjoyable. But for the podcast, we do try to look back critically as well and see if there's any takeaways. And yeah, the less is more approach that I think is one of the things that I really loved about the first one.
Yeah.
So
And we know from that it was puzzles first, then story.
it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And Eric was very humble about that approach, which is good.
Like I could put some let me just put some talk at the end, right, of each puzzle.
Yeah.
Was basically what he said about it. And here it's not, it's not that. And again, like these are great stories. Like the whole Cave
Yeah.
Johnson, that whole thing of like how this place came to be. And like they signal in advance like that there is a hidden, that goes for mile. I think Wheatley says like it's miles down, of like stuff. And I was like, miles down, like how big,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like, again, it just like, it hits me of like, how big is this place? And I have a sense, right? And of course, all of this stuff plays together really, really well, which does make it really, really great. But again, it does feel like too many. I think when you're doing like, okay, I'm going to have some puzzle and then some story and some puzzle and some story, that works well at 2 to 4 hours in a way that feels too much at 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah. 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 The chapter that's called the itch, as you're also talking there, it's making me think of our conversation with Eric that, yeah, it is likely, as Eric said, the design and puzzles probably came first. And that chapter before the end which again, the last chapter isn't even, I think it's pretty short because you're just basically going to fight him. Which before we finish, I do want to talk, even though neither of us played it, I think we should actually just log it in the episode just to make sure people know what happens. And I'm okay spoiling it at this point. But the itch chapter seems like there was a design decision of like, or, a team decision, collaborative team decision where they're like, okay, the chapter before the end, we're going to come back in and do some more puzzles, some more, I wouldn't call them traditional, but we're going to use all the tools the player has. We're going to do 19 more puzzles.
And we're going to also want you to hate Wheatley just as much as you hated GladOS in the first game, right?
Right.
If you don't already.
Right. But that's the first game, right? It's another portal is portal right before the end. And I think they're probably talking to Eric or whomever, right? Probably Eric as far as writing goes. And they're like, we need a wrapper for this. And so they come up with this whole thing, the itch, where it's like there's this compulsion that the AIs have to test people, right, to do tests, and that's like the whole conceit. And he's like,
it's the DNA of the company, right? It's
so
thing, right?
But it's like, I don't want to say it's forced, but it's kind of forced. It's like, okay, we have 19 more puzzles. What's the story we're going to wrap around them before we go fight him? How do we kind of draw that out? And so it's funny, like well written, super funny. You love Wheatley and hate him. GladOS is there with you. She's making great comments. Like, it's really lovely, but also it's sort of like, they wanted 19 more puzzles, and so they needed a narrative wrapper for it. So anyway, I feel like I'm being too down on it, but it's interesting. I mean,
when we say it's a great game, it's okay to also say, but there are some problems, and because it is a great game,
Fair enough, yeah. And then remind me too, one of the other, I don't know if I said this in pre-show, but one of the other topics I want to talk about is just the Half-Life world in general.
Well, we should talk about that, with respect to Cave, Caroline.
Yeah.
So let's just go right into that. I mean, one of the things I really, as we know, I'm not a lore guy, but one of the things I did really like in that section, and I said this about Portal, I think, is like, this is how I like story. Is like, it matters. Like, this is why these things are happening. It's explaining why the mechanics exist. Like, I had forgotten the white paint, mostly because we played the co-op and it doesn't have that. And I only got to that part of it today, and I was like, that's right. Like, I thought there was another one, but I couldn't remember what it was for. I was like, but of course that has to be there. And like, because it doesn't just work on any surface. It has to be it works on specially prepared surfaces.
Super, super clever. Yeah.
And that's brilliant. Like, and that, developing to that point. Yeah, go.
Do you remember what sorry to interrupt, but do you remember what it's made of? He has a voice line about it.
Space rocks. Moon rocks. Because of the ending.
It just dawned on me. And that is bonkers brilliant.
Well, like I said, they think of these things, they figure this stuff out and back propagate it into their story. I mean, that's that's the potato thing, just again, right? Is like, how is this going to work? How are we going to have GladOS carried around? How are we going to shoot Wheatley out of the moon? We'll just back propagate that in, to these other things. It's great.
Unbelievable.
It's great. He's like, they told me I didn't have enough for $7 worth of space rocks. Never mind 70 million. But I told them, you only live once, And
he's like gotten sick from the moon rocks.
He's so sick. Yeah.
He's like inhaled the fumes. Yeah. I mean, the way that it relates to, I don't know if we want to move to the Half-Life topic. No,
please. Because he also talks about that.
Yeah, the Cave Johnson stuff is just such that for me, there's the Wheatley reversal and surprise, which you kind of have it's very clearly foreshadowed in the first game, what's going to happen. But here you're like, okay, Wheatley, the switcheroo there, and GladOS and the potato and all that. And then the Cave Johnson thing for me, though, I remember playing it back originally being a big surprise as well. Like, this is very like nice and refreshing to have this whole other unexpected. I just thought it was going to be these AI, right? Like these two AI back and forth, which if you were to take the Cave Johnson section out, it would just be that. But they plummet you to the bottom of the, whatever, and then you see the years, which is brilliant. And for me, it's just this delightful, unexpected, and to your point, well-written way to integrate gameplay purpose and meaning and reason for being there into really well-written dialogue, and also backstory.
Up to and including explaining GladOS, which I didn't need an explanation for, you know, but I wasn't sad to have it. There's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't care, like I don't care why that happened, but because she's become somewhat of a sympathetic character, like she's learning something. This has been cut away from her. It feels like, she's like that had been taken away and she didn't remember this part of it. And then when Cave is talking about, well, we should just, I'm super sick and I want them to download me into to an artificial intelligence, whatever he says, to continue on. But you know what? If I don't make it, then it should be Caroline. Caroline should run this company, and she starts like, echoing and reacting to things that he's saying, in the recordings. She's saying it, in the present, some of it's her, it's Caroline in the background, Caroline in the background, but there's a lot of GladOS responding to the recordings in the foreground. And like, you can start making that connection. It's a perfect way of like telling the audience, hey, I've got 2 and here I'm going to add another 2. And the audience goes, oh my God, 4. And then shortly thereafter you go, and by the way, 4. And they go, oh my God, I'm so smart. Right. I mean, it's just like, Wheatley wouldn't figure that out, but we did. We were ahead of Wheatley on that one.
You sound like Cave Johnson right now.
Yeah, I do. I mean, he's doing J. Jonah Jameson about as much as he can.
I mean, it's so J.K. Simmons though too, right?
Oh,
like he
has that voice. He just has that voice.
I don't even know. I mean, maybe it was a little bit before his skyrocket to, as far as like he had like a series of really big roles.
Yeah.
I feel like after that, which I don't know if they would have gotten him at that point.
I don't know. I think you'd be surprised because they're, having worked with the studio that gets like a couple big voices for the games, not for tons of
maybe
lines,
so.
but they love those. That is an easy paycheck for a voice actor.
That's fair.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not paying a ton of money for them. They're not doing a ton of work, but they don't have to get. They just show up, they do it for 2 hours and they go away and they get this big paycheck.
Voiceover work is good money. Yeah. And it's
as a star, right. As a, it's at scale, it's not amazing, but it's good, but it's not like, but if you're coming in and you're like, oh, we want this person's voice, cause that person can do this thing, then it pays very well. So, and
if you were to look at the script for Cave, linearly, it's not that much.
No, it's not.
So but it's, that's another one of the pieces of the art form is finding the right voice actor for the right role, is really critical in games too, for games that have that kind of thing. Yeah. So, I mean, from that point, like getting all of that, cause going back to, I don't remember what we said about Aperture in our Half-Life series, and Black Mesa's mentioned here. In fact, Cave mentions Black Mesa. Those guys, Black Mesa, they can go to hell. Yeah. So there's all these little Easter eggs. But it was great to see and get more experience in this world. It's such a unique and interesting world, and we know so little about it in the grand scheme of things when it comes to other video game franchises. And so as a fan, this game did remind me, and a kind of a different but related topic, how bummed I am. Now, I don't know if I'll ever play Half-Life Alyx. I haven't played it, but because it's VR, I don't know if I will. Just for motion sickness reasons, but how bummed I am. Like, yes, I get that they're live. This is maybe a little bit of a soapbox for a second, but I get that they're a live multiplayer company now, and that makes business sense for them, and that's what the team is drawn to do, and that's what they're doing. Great. I get a feeling like maybe there's a little bit of meritocracy kind of stuff going on there too, so people are driven toward things that will, which will
Right.
do
Yeah.
well.
I mean, they
right?
talked about that in that manual I mentioned earlier. Actually, no, it was part of the conversation around that is like that people were drawn towards because of the
Things,
stack ranking, I think that they do, right? Or something like that. What?
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
like, oh, well, I want to work on this thing that if I work on hats for Team Fortress 2, that is worth more to the company than me working on, especially a VR game. Although they had a hardware interest there.
Right. They had other goals there.
They were
for sure.
They were trying to do something there, and that was like, well, we'll make the killer app for VR, but that that didn't work out. And from my perspective,
No, I don't think it did. I mean, they did. Apparently, they did, but it wasn't.
No, I'm sure it did. It did very well.
The market isn't.
Yeah, I don't think the market has grown enough to do, like we can do a bunch of those. Like it didn't do what they dreamed of it doing, I guess would be my point.
Yeah, and because it sounds like it's so employee driven, and flat structure, which is great. Different way to do things. I just fear that a single player game in the Half-Life world, I just miss them.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just me as an old man, and that's kind of my generation of gamer, and maybe the gamers these days don't care. And Valve's right, they wouldn't do well. I don't think they have directives where somebody says do or do not make those. But when the company's set up the way that it's set up, I just don't see them making anymore. Right. Yeah. I just don't see it happening. And after playing this and I'm almost done with it, it just bums me out because it's so good.
I mean, it bums me out we didn't get a second Campo Santo game. Like I was really interested in that game. And when they went there, that game basically died. And, they went and worked on, I mean, if you're going to be given the keys to the kingdom, you might as well go and work on a Half-Life game. But like to then have it be the game that I'm not going to play. Like I'm they haven't solved that problem for me. I don't know if it's possible to solve that problem for me. There's a large percentage of the population that VR will not work for really ever. I mean, maybe if they get it up to thousands of frames per second, but even then I think the flicker response is part of the sickness. So, but let's not make this about me, Tim.
Well, I just bummed, because
I am too. I mean, I would have loved to play that Half-Life 3 game, even if that didn't end. And of course that wouldn't have ended up being the story because that's not how game development works, right? It would have started there and it would have become something else because some element of that wouldn't have worked. And, but I mean, can you imagine the Half-Life 3 that somehow incorporates, I don't know, portal technology into it as well? I mean, it's just like,
well, it's funny too. I mean, you mentioned that. I don't know if I don't know if I have the name of the character, but their new multiplayer game Deadlock, which is a third person shooter MOBA. So similar to Paragon, was that the Epic one that did? So anyway, it's third person shooter, but it's a MOBA, so there's lanes and stuff. But it's hero based, and so like Team Fortress or whatever. One of the heroes is called the bellhop or the doorman or something.
Okay.
It's like, and his aesthetic is that 50s kind of bellhop, like with the pill hat, and kind of dressed very dapperly.
Tim Roth in 4 Rooms. Got it.
Exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm. He has his ability, portals.
Oh my.
He can open doors for, I guess, himself and the team, right? So they can like go places, which there's we talked about on the Portal podcast. There's another shooter that does this called Splitgate. That is like Halo meets Portals. So that's like more your fast action arena. But anyway, point being, they have incorporated portals into another game. It's a multiplayer game. Yeah. Multiplayer game. Now, apparently Deadlock is quite good. I've heard from friends who play it. So it's, they're still doing their thing. So I wish them the best there. But yeah, I'm just bummed because this game, Portal 2, is so good at that world building stuff. It just reminds me how good they are at it. Like everything from environment art to audio design to music to story to writing, everything. It's just like the world is so rich. It just bums me out that there won't be any more.
Yeah, I know. I mean, talking with Eric and him wanting like to just for the rest of his career do those short games, I'm like, yes, please, please, get
Yeah.
Eric, and
Yeah.
Chet and whoever else, that you can get on those things. Get Mark back, and do those things. I would play those in that way. I mean, that is, and actually at that point, really what the game is, because they'll be short, is kind of immaterial to me. And so, I'll be interested in playing all of them because they're
Yeah.
short. They will have some, interesting, probably funny story that I'll really enjoy. It'll enlarge this world in a way that I find appealing.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you said with Aperture Desk Job or whatever, it's like, it's just this short thing that's half an hour or an hour or whatever it is, and it's just a little delight. It's just and Portal wasn't much more than that, in terms of scope.
And again, the humor in that little free app thing, I mean, probably hour maybe,
Yeah.
if that, but just super clever. And I guess Eric was one of the writers on that. So yeah, and then the other thing that bums me out that just is so baffling about them is that if any company has the means to do it, if they wanted to make a single player game, sure, maybe it won't do the same, won't have the same concurrent users per month as another game. But what do they care? They're Valve. Like, they could make one and just put it in a can, win some awards. And so now I'm just ranting as a fan and as a player of like, darn it.
I mean, to some extent, that position in the industry, and now we're probably pretty far off topic and we should maybe come back and talk about co-op.
Yeah.
But my last point on that would be that kind of single player narrative with innovation in the gameplay has been taken over by Sony's first party rather studios. The Spider-Mans, I mean, they're huge games, right? So it's a very different sort of game. But the Naughty Dogs and the Insomniacs and Sucker Punch, whatever, there are others. I mean, those are not all of them, but those are like the three that come to mind immediately of like, this is their, like, that's their loss leader, right? I mean, they're spending a lot of money on those games to kind of keep the overall Sony brand kind of burnished. And Valve is kind of like, well, we don't need to do that because, Steam's on every gamer's PC, worldwide or whatever, in X number of countries, and we have a billion users to, whatever, 170 million PS4 and PS5 owners or whatever it is. And they don't need to. And again, the incentives there may not be in that direction. I don't really know enough, but, I would suspect that is part of it. So.
Anyway, yeah, that's a good point.
Let's talk briefly about co-op and then turn to email and see if we got any questions from the gang who are listening live. We played co-op over the last, I guess, 5 weeks prior to this, which is kind of a lot now that I think about it. But we played all of the sections other than I guess there's a bonus section we didn't play of Portal 2 co-op, which was a first for me. So that was kind of fun.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. So you should start.
Yeah. Okay. So co-op makes up for a lot always, right? And so what it makes up for here is that a lot of the buttons or the bumpers are not as deep or interesting or progressing the narrative or anything of that with GladOS, because she doesn't care about you because you're just a robot, or a pair of robots. And while I appreciate that, and I like so it must have taken us maybe 8 hours probably total, because we would play some Spelunky before we did that. So it's probably in the 6 to 8 hour range that we played the co-op. I did miss that a little bit. I felt like I wanted some progress. I mean, she kept alluding to the humans, but like that was like the same level of illusion that was in Portal 1, but spread over 3 times as long, maybe 4 times as long. So I did feel like the mix was not quite right there, but I did feel like a lot of the puzzles were really good and interesting, and I got to boss you around, so that was fun for me too. I mean, you were playing them again. I mean, but I know that you forgot them 10 minutes after you played them in most cases.
Yeah, we could play them tomorrow and I'd get stuck on the same places.
Yeah, we got stumped in a couple places.
Yeah, like the memory, like Calamity, who was watching a stream, mentioned it at one point. There's that one puzzle where you have to do both at the same time, and then you knock heads to land
so
in
that
the place.
Yeah, so that you cancel each other's momentum and fall.
Yeah. So like that's the example I'd bring up, is like the perfect example of why you would want to do a co-op Portal game. Because there's also a side of you like, yeah, co-op, I get it, makes sense. You're trying to make the product as robust as it can be. But co-op for the sake of co-op isn't always the right decision too, even though, to your point, it does generally always make things better.
Yeah,
because you're playing with friends or whatever.
I mean, my counterpoint puzzle example would be that one where I don't know how many times you had to do it, but it was like run, jump through, and grab the box as you're passing through before it falls through the dissolver grid. It was like, that was the counter example of like, this should not be this hard.
Yeah,
like they should be helping us here, and I think, we haven't talked about this at all, but like that was also true of this game, is that there's more help here. There's more like, oh, you figured out what you should be doing, we will bend the physics to work. And they didn't do it in that puzzle. It was like, well, you got to get the timing right, and you probably did it 24 times, and it was a lot. That one's fresh because it was the last one we played, but there may have been others that were like that, but that was the one where I was like, are you kidding me? Like, they should have helped here.
Yeah, and they're a very playtesting focused company, so I feel like they maybe should have caught that. But yeah, so they're not all created equal for sure.
Yeah.
And there's, so in anytime, even in single player, anytime, I always have had trouble, and it's worse in that particular puzzle's case, on the orange goo, the very fast goo, aiming yourself to a narrow, there's a couple, and you're about to hit one or you just hit it, where you have to go through a portal, and the portals are narrow, right? So if you're playing on sticks and the stick drifts at all, you're gonna miss it, and that happens in single player.
My circa 2003
you're still using a 360.
Oh my god, it is
wired 360.
I guess it was 2005, but it is, it's not in good shape. I had the same thing, whereas like you had to run across the orange and then hit a blue patch that would jump you up into the wall.
Yep, that's
and
the
like
one.
I missed that again and again, and every time, and I would blame myself, and I'm like, no, this is not my fault.
They could have given you some help there.
They could have funneled a little bit. It's like, so it's sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and it's like a weird, I either want them always to be one thing or always the other thing. Always help me or never help me. But like, there's a mix here, it feels like.
Right. And I think I still suspect, though it's just a theory, that there could be some mouse and keyboard bias with this stuff. Because I think with a mouse you can aim much more
that's
finely, right?
And easily.
And it's easier to create an error for yourself with a stick, because you kind of you roll your thumb a little bit and then you're
hitting the wall.
So it's all over. Yeah. So all that being said, co-op's always fun, and I think that that they did a great job with that stuff. The other thing that we talked about while we were streaming is, and I think we had some good on-stream debates about how to solve it. When you have two portals to keep track of,
this will come up in email. So
okay, good, yeah. And they've added in the new mechanics, right? Whether it's the goo or whatever. But then throw in 4,
right?
and there's the usability, or the accessibility rather, points about like color, and like it was hard for me sometimes to keep the color straight, even for yours, let alone my own. So there's that, because they're like, cool colors, warm colors, they're very similar for each one. So I mean, there is a little bit of like, I feel like once they committed to doing it, they just went all the way. But there probably was moments when they're like, I bet you there were moments where like, okay, we maybe bit off a little bit too much with this.
Backed off a little on this,
because portals are serious, it's a very hard concept.
It's a hard thing to think about. I mean, just to like, it is so alien to our experience. We understand I can jump higher, I can run faster. Like those were never the problems. The problem is always I can walk through that wall and come out over there. That's not a human thing. So it's like that's the one that you have to get over, and is hard to get over. I mean, it's maybe easier if you played in one or two big sessions, and we didn't do that, but even so, definitely have moments where I'm like, I've got to do the things that I don't normally do, i.e. run faster, jump higher. I don't often do that. And then I also have to do this other thing. But that, it is always fun to do co-op games. So it's
and some of the puzzles were really, really clever. So I hand it to him for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you have any topics you want to hit before we go to our couple of emails?
Not from the audience, you mean?
No, we'll do that as part of the. No, I just meant you. If there are other Portal 2 topics you want to make sure we hit.
Nope, I think we hit all mine. Okay. All my big ones.
All right. Well, while you check your phone, why don't you go ahead?
I'm looking at my notes. I'm looking at my notes.
You're looking at your notes to see.
All right. Oh yeah,
that's the thing I don't normally see, so I didn't.
Yeah. Well, usually my notes are on the screen, but for the
many things
recording, I decided to keep them on my phone.
Got it. All right, go ahead then and give us. I think this person is in the chat, so.
Yeah, this person's definitely in the chat. Oh my goodness. Okay, subject. In case of live stream, read email from one Miss Stir Heed Hip. You kidding me? Where is he?
It keeps on going.
Hey, Brett and Tim. Hope your live stream. This is so meta. Hope your live stream is going well. Thank you, Mystery, by the way, for writing this and sending this for this occasion. This is great. Hope your live stream is going well. I want an opportunity to see how an email gets read on the cast, so I'm sending this in. Don't worry, it won't be a difficult question. On the recent Portal 2 co-op stream, loving them and the Spelunky competition, by the way. Competition? That's not a thing. I happen to be playing at the same time as Brett is playing, but we are not competing. Tim mentioned the difficulty of remembering which portal needs to be moved, even though the game has a couple methods of delivering related information. I feel like he's throwing shade slightly at me. Do you think you think in the case of Portal, the indicators are sufficient, and it's a matter of spending time in the game, gaining muscle memory, or they should add more or change one? And more generically, how do you decide when making a game that the information presented is sufficient, especially as you're so close to the systems and know how they're supposed to work? Regards, Miss Stir Heed Hip. P.S. I wanted to do it an entire email in Mad Gab style, but thought that might be too cruel. Thank you for not doing that.
Yeah, I would have been reading that one.
Stir.
I was thinking about this a little bit today because I was getting the email together, and I actually feel like this is not really a surmountable problem mechanically because of the like I said, this is a thing we don't normally do. It's a left-right confusion thing. I think it's only solvable by level design so that you can always see both, which I also feel like a very hard problem. I'm going to be here. And I actually think this is why I had less of this in Portal 1, is that a lot of the rooms are very like, I can see the puzzle when I enter the room. I drop down to a position where I can see the places I want to put the two portals, and I put the two portals. And a lot of the puzzles are kind of that level of complexity. Not all of them. I think later on, when you have some of those velocity-based ones where you're going up and down, those I would often mess up. But in general, I think that the issue is that I would be thinking through other parts of the problem, and then I'd be like, and then I just need to put a portal here. And I was like, and it's the wrong one, and it's,
Yeah.
And without being able to see the other one or remembering to check, because it might be far away, especially in Portal 2, it might be far away behind you, up 6 stories. Like, it could be very far away, and sometimes they're hard to even see at that point. Um, it felt like an insurmountable problem from a mechanic standpoint with the mix of mechanics that we had, but maybe a solvable level design problem, um, if they weren't kind of so open. Anyway, that was kind of where I was on that.
I think that's a good point. I do think a big burden does fall on level design to ensure the flow of the memory mapping, if you will, is there, right? That your memory is being logged in the right progression of the space around you. That can help a lot. The debate we were having on stream when we were playing it, and I know at least Calamity was there. I think some others might be there, might have been contributing to this, and he had an interesting idea, I would say, as well, of some shape language stuff. But it, for me, and this, so one answer for them to Miss Stir's question, or maybe I should say Miss Hip's question, is that Valve does a lot of playtesting. It is, we know this, they've said it, it's public knowledge. I've got it from friends inside, fundamentally interwoven into their development. Yeah, I don't know if it's as much as we do because we do a lot. We do it daily.
Yeah.
But and I'm bragging a little bit for the team there, but I do think they do it very very often. And so I think to them thinking that they had sufficient amount, I think they had a lot of, they probably had a lot of place testing hours in that gave them confidence that they had enough.
Yeah.
And I think they probably did have enough for a project that wasn't supposed to be endless, right? You can endlessly iterate on this kind of stuff. That being said, they also absolutely were too close to it. Their play testers might have even become too close to it. Playtesting sessions are not usually with breaks. You usually have somebody play for an extended period. Maybe they come back, but oftentimes it's hard to get the same people back if you're doing it from the public. And so that you really need to simulate the problem that Brett's talking about of, I've played for an hour and then I play 2 weeks from now for another hour. And it's like, to your point, to the emails point, Mystery, the muscle memory just isn't there. But for me, the thing I will add on is the controller. And I didn't actually go back and play with mouse and keyboard, so I don't know if it's better or not, but I'm betting it's probably going to be about the same. One thing that Nintendo tends to do very well most of the time, and I actually will use a controller that I don't think is maybe everyone's favorite controller, but the GameCube's controller. Now,
controller, whatever.
Okay, I've heard some debates.
The wireless one, anyway. Yeah,
the Wavebird is magic.
I wish mine had still worked.
But if you remember, like they did a very good job with that controller of making every button very specific, right? Versus like left trigger, right trigger being exactly the same. But they did have triggers and stuff, but they had I forget all the names, but the A button and the B button, they're different sizes and different colors, and then different
X
places.
and Y were curved, and then you had the C whatever hat thing, and then you had the Z button, right? And there wasn't a left and right Z button like the Switch, which is what they call them, because
just nonsense. That was a bad call. But so my point is that in Portal, both portals are on triggers, and for me in my head, like it's both of them being on the same type of button that I would constantly get confused on. I'm like, oh, I should have done the left trigger. How would I ever have associated? Yes, it's on the reticle and it's on the crosshairs. Yes, there's colors. Yes, they're on the left and the right side of the reticle.
Yeah.
So there are definitely plenty of tells there. But as Brett said, once you put them in the world and then you spin around, your relative right left doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
So you're going to hit the wrong one.
Or even worse, like we know and this is not new information, but like we know psychologically that when a human being walks through something like a door, and hey, what's a portal?
Mm.
When you walk through a door, your short-term memory is purged. Like
Yeah.
that is a literal physical fact
Yeah.
about the
You've mentioned
human
that before,
brain.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
And
good
it's
point.
like, so as soon as you use one, you're not going to remember because
Yeah.
that's all working memory. That none of that's going to long-term memory. It's like how to use them is going to long-term memory and things like that, sort of overall mechanical stuff. But like it is too short a time frame to solve a puzzle, and be able to keep that stuff in, especially if you're using them. So it makes it
Mm-hmm.
even worse. Like it's inherent
Mm-hmm.
in the design that's going to work against their psychology.
Yeah, it's a game about doors.
Yeah.
So
Doors everywhere. Yeah.
you've made it really difficult. Yeah,
And there's
so
some traditional doors as well. And often when you're getting thrown through space, you're landing in a place that's also kind of like funneling you. So it's also door like when you're
yeah.
landing on those ramps. It's like it's doors all the way down, Tim.
Yeah. Well, the reason I brought up the controller is that, and I think the email asked also like how we solve this. And I definitely don't have an easy answer for that, but playtesting is always a part of it. If I had an answer for that, like we'd be all retired. I don't know. Like there's if we had those kinds, those are not, every game is different problem. Every team solves it differently. So I don't have a solution for you there, but that I can boil down. But the reason I brought the controller is that I think that, like, to give you an example, if the portals were on different types of buttons, right? Say one portal was on A and another one was on left trigger or something, and then to Calamity's point, they also had different shape language that associated it with that stuff. I think they could have gone farther personally with solving that problem, and it's only worse in co-op because we have 4 portals.
Yeah.
But it's a really, really hard problem to solve for any game and any developer. And we've definitely messed it up multiple times ourselves. So
Yeah.
I think we have a special guest on the stream there.
Yep. I'm seeing that. Quiet so far, but who knows? All right. I have the other email we have, which is related to the Deadly Premonition episodes, which are the game we've been playing recently. The subject is, quote, "I wish there were more police games." So not exactly what I think you said, but I guess we could talk about it. This is from Pablo. Pablo says, "Hi guys. Towards the end of the 3rd Deadly Premonition episode, Tim said something like, 'I wish there were more police games.' I don't know about any new ones, but how about the old Police Quest series? I only played a couple of the early ones and only for a short time each, but I seem to recall they were strong on the, quote, police procedural side and maybe quite authentic, question mark. Then again, I was just a kid back then and living in Spain, so what I knew about authentic American police representation would have been close to nothing. It would have been the same for me at the time. Anyway, keep up the awesome work. Listening to you guys talk more about games always makes me want to go and play them myself, Pablo." So
I can't speak to this.
You can't speak to Police Quest. You haven't.
No, I can.
Oh, you can. Yeah, I've never played them. The only real connection I have with them is a Campo Santo one. Again, the Campo Santo had a quarterly PDF that they sent out to their subscribers when they were in development, both before and after.
Not a newsletter, but a PDF.
It was a PDF that they sent out, the Campo Santo quarterly. And Duncan Fife would often write articles in there, and he wrote one about Police Quest. I think he published it elsewhere as well, or maybe I learned about it
This
there.
rings a bell.
Yeah, and maybe he published it somewhere else, and I read about it there, and maybe I just was aware of Duncan because of his work on the quarterly. But that's my recollection. He wrote one about I can't remember the name of the police chief, but the LA police chief was involved in at least one of the Police Quest games. So that's what I know.
Yep.
I give it to you.
They had, so, as when we did our Sierra series, which we played King's Quest and Space Quest, and Police Quest follows that same paradigm. It's exactly the same game generally. But they did hire a consultant. I think he was the LA police chief, maybe, I don't remember. He's on the box, like he's in the manual, like they really plugged this hard. I will say as a PSA caveat, I don't think those games age well, and I do believe they will be fairly problematic. So just to warn anyone who's looking back at it, yeah, they're pretty problematic. But they did attempt to have as authentic of a police police not procedural, I guess, in the sense of the creative sense of it or whatever. I don't know what when they say police procedural, that's a genre to me, but maybe it also has a real definition of the procedures that police go through.
Yeah, yeah.
But to give an
I mean,
example,
the genre is meant to reflect those procedures, although in fact, I would say there are probably I read them. Some follow a police procedure, and some are like, this is what people imagine police procedure is.
Procedure.
Right? This is a procedure. Is it police?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stream just got air quotes, but of course the podcast did not. So, anyway, yeah. So to the degree where in Police Quest 1, before you can leave to go on duty for the first time, you have to walk around your car and check each tire to make sure that it is not flat, because that's what they do, apparently. So it's like they went down really, really specific road there. But to Pablo's question, I sort of meant police, but what I think I really meant, Moss mentioned LA Noire. I'm talking more like, I think what I really meant, I don't remember what I said, but what I really meant was crime focused, solving a crime focused games like LA Noire.
I think
you
said Twin Peaks specifically, actually, not a police game, but Twin Peaks,
Yeah, well, Twin Peaks, but also like there was an X-Files. Detective. Yeah, there was an X-Files game that was pretty cool. That was an FMV game. Reed and I flipped out over that game. That would be a fun one to look at someday. I'm sure it's impossible to play. We mentioned Heavy Rain. LA Noire came up. Moss mentioned that. So there are some out there, but for what, I don't know. I just feel like as far as TV goes, they're like, that's the genre. There's too many police procedural / crime focused TV shows. Too many. Why aren't there more game ones? Because I want to be the Cooper. I want to be Agent Cooper, and I want to solve those crimes.
I mean, I think, honestly, my answer to that is that it's harder to do that, I think, than
watch somebody do it.
Yeah. Because somebody does it and they pick out the information, right? Because LA Noire tried to do this where they had lots of clues that were useless in the scene of the crime, for example. And it was kind of annoying. It was like, okay, well, I go up to a bunch of stuff and it's like, this probably has nothing to do with it. And it's like, that's not how the police treat a crime scene, right? The police gather everything gets tested, right, until they have a suspect, and then they probably narrow a little too much on their suspect, but like there's a lot about that in both fiction and reality. But that's a hard problem. Like the thing I hate about like a JRPG that has like an empty chest somewhere, I'm like, don't put that there. All you did was waste my time.
You're one of those,
right? It's like I don't want that in those.
It's to make the chests that have something in them more valuable.
Oh yeah, those 63,000 other chests. Yeah, well, they definitely feel way more valuable now that I wasted 2 minutes running down this one. Yeah, I mean, it's just like salience is a really hard problem, and then of course, if you treat all of that as potentially salient, now all of that stuff could matter. And now it's a job, now it really is a police procedural. Yeah. And I think that's a hard problem, and I think with Deadly Premonition, to pull it back to that game, what we want is like, that's why I spent so much time talking about like him doing the profiling, everything. It's like, I'm never going to come up with that. But I want to have done the work and get the reward of I put the pieces together, even if I didn't. It's like, and I think that's the sort of critical, that's the feeling I want. I don't actually want to do what police do, in terms of detectives. I want to, it's like Rock Band. I could go and learn to play an instrument. I want to feel like I'm performing on stage, like with my piece of plastic in my hand.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I agree with you. I think that's a really good point, that the reality of doing what I'm saying is hard to make fun, for sure. But, we talked about Obra Dinn. There's some really clever versions of this.
But they all find ways to constrain the problem down. to make
right,
it,
exactly.
to make
Yeah.
that fun. Yeah.
Adventure games in general, like a
Yeah.
lot of them are mystery based. Golden Idol came up. The Nancy Drew games came up. There's a lot of Sherlock Holmes games, and oftentimes I've played a few of those. And actually, some of the Nancy Drew ones are actually quite good, as well as the Sherlock Holmes ones. But some of them, like a lot of them, are heavy. They're more traditional adventure games, right? It's heavy on story and character stuff, and you're not really solving. You're not really doing what Sherlock
Nancy's
Holmes
making
does.
the connections, right? I mean,
Yeah, Nancy's making the connection. Sherlock's home,
Yeah.
Watson. But the thing I want to bring up is that there are some board games, right? There are some board games that actually do crack this nut, and so I have to believe it's possible. And there have been some that have done it in a clever way. But I think to your point, if you're going to do it in a video game, you got to lean into it being a video game and do it in a way that really embellishes on that medium versus just trying to make it like a TV show. Because Consulting Detective, even the original, if anyone's ever played it, which is a Sherlock Holmes kind of it's a board game, but I remember as a kid even feeling like Sherlock Holmes in that, right? And you were really looking for clues and solving stuff. It's not really heavy, but it's very difficult. And so, I'm excited to make one of those games someday.
I mean, we can talk about it. All right. Well, I'm going to go then to our outro. I hope you've gotten everything out of this that you wanted this evening. And those who are here on the stream got something a little extra. We love to get your reviews. We get all of the ones that are on the Apple infrastructure. And of course, we get your emails, such as the ones we read tonight, at devgameclub@gmail.com. We're on the web at devgameclub.com. And my co-host, and occasionally me, Twitch at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end, which we're doing right now.
Which you're watching as we discuss this. You're off this week because you were traveling, but hopefully you'll be back next week with something.
Usually Wednesdays, Wednesdays Pacific, 7 o'clock Pacific.
All right.
And did you already plug the looking for more streamers?
I did.
You plugged noises.
I did that at the beginning. Yeah. Right. I know it was almost 2 hours
ago. It was
ago.
always
You've already forgotten. But I did.
I only listened to half of what you say.
You can find more of this on the Discord, which is fan run, and there's a link for that in the show notes. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, that Discord, our merch store, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun learning from GladOS which robot she prefers this week, and good night.
Good night.